in order to run a great business, you have to have conflict, you have to have disagree, you have to have debate in order to get to the right strategy in the right direction. The perfect person to run the family business might have a completely different last name. What you know you need to do might be painful, it might be scary, but what you're doing now is also painful and scary, and you're just used to it. So go for it and do the thing you know you need to do.
Thanks for joining us on the Better Business, Better Life podcast. I'm your host, Debra Chantry-Taylor, and I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs lead their ideal lives by creating better businesses. Because as I like to say, life is too bloody short. I'm a certified EOS implementer, an FBA accredited family business advisor, and a business owner myself with several business interests. I work with established business owners and their leadership teams to help them live their ideal entrepreneurial life using EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I use this podcast to share practical tips and tools about how to use EOS in your business and your life to get more of what you want. Today's show is actually the first in a two-part family business special with my special guest, Sara B. Today's guest has got a name that is a whole sentence. She's an expert EOS implementer, and she's the former director of an international family business center. Sara and I share the same passion for helping second generation and beyond family businesses to succeed. In part one, we're going to be sharing how to balance family dynamics and business using the EOS tools and the 3-circle family business model from Harvard. And in part two, we're going to talk about how to overcome succession planning challenges. And in part two, we're going to show how to overcome succession planning challenges using the Harvard 3-circle family business model and EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Sara B. is an expert EOS implementer focused on multi-generational family businesses. Welcome back, Sara. It's great to have you back on the show again.
It's so fun to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Really looking forward to it. So for those of you who don't know, Sara has been on my podcast a number of times now. She is a fellow EOS implementer over in the US and also a family business advisor. And we share lots of common interests in the work that we do. So I always enjoy talking to you. We're going to talk today, though, about something quite specific, and that is about balancing family dynamics and business. And so, first of all, I'm going to ask Sara to reintroduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself, and then we're going to get stuck into that topic.
Awesome. I am super thrilled to be back here. I've been an EOS implementer for 10 years. I'm an expert implementer, which sounds way cooler than it feels, but it's evidence, I guess, that I've been doing it for a while. Most of my clients, I should say, while I have been an EOS implementer, have at least 2 family members in the business, and that's how I define family business. My favorite situations are when there are 2 generations in the family business trying to work out how to run the business and own the business and be family together. And then I also work with family business ownership groups as they try to figure out succession to the next generation.
Perfect. Well done on the expert implementer. I mean, that is just phenomenal. 10 years. Wow. It goes so fast, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
I hit my 5 years just back in December last year. And it's like, wow, has it really been 5 years already? Where did the time go?
How is that possible?
I don't know. But because we love what we do, I guess. Okay. So if we're talking about, family business dynamics, you've worked with lots and lots of family businesses over the years. What is the biggest kind of challenges that you see in a family business?
Yeah. The biggest ones that I see are families that try to use their same concepts around fairness and their same priorities around getting along or having I almost said harmony. Well, maybe that's the thing, but having harmony in their family, they try to use those same ideas inside of the business, and it doesn't work. For example, if you think that fair is equal in your family, which is I think a really great way to think about fairness inside of your family, they try to bring that over into the business. I worked with a family business once. It was a 3rd generation. And the first generation had said, everybody in the second generation, no matter what their job is, will make the exact same amount of money. And in that generation, they had somebody who was working in the warehouse. They had somebody who was the president and somebody who was the head of sales. And all 3 of those people were making the same amount of money. And it even though it looked fair for the family, it was not fair inside of the business. So that's the number one thing, is getting that idea of fairness mixed up, and then getting that idea of oh, we have to get along and everything has to feel nice and smooth and easy all the time. It doesn't work in business. In order to run a great business, you have to have conflict, you have to have disagree, you have to have debate in order to get to the right strategy in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to see how they get to that kind of understanding, though, because as you said, in a family, there is about everybody being treated equal. But when you're in a business, if you don't look at the roles the people are doing and actually reward them accordingly, it can actually create a whole lot of issues, can't it?
Oh my gosh, huge, huge issues. Yeah. Fights, disagreements, people not talking to each other, pitting children against each other and the next generation. It can be really ugly. And when that doesn't happen, it can be so beautiful, which I know you see, right? These incredible people who run wonderful businesses and also love each other and have a tendency to love their team and their customers and their vendors and create these incredible places to work.
So how do they go about? How does a family business go about establishing what is fair in a business in terms of roles?
I like to I like to talk about this concept of the 100% healthy family business, which of course will never happen. It's impossible, but just as a concept to put out there for family businesses to strive toward. And when I think about fairness, well, my favorite tool is to think about the Harvard's 3-circle model of family business, right? There's one circle is the family, one is the business, and the third is ownership. And what I think the most healthy family businesses do is define fair in each of those circles. So usually fair is equal in the family. In my mind, what fair is in the business, the healthiest model would be you get paid market rate, the appropriate amount of money for the job that you're doing. And also, by the way, it has to be a job that's needed. So if you have a next generation family member who's a surgeon, but your family business makes picnic tables, you probably don't need a surgeon. So you can't pay them surgeon wages in a company that doesn't need a surgeon, right? So there has to be a real job. And then you get paid what you would get paid if you worked somewhere else. And then with ownership, I don't think there's a specific rule, like here's the perfect idea of fair, other than this. Owners must identify what they believe is fair on ownership. And it might be that you have to buy the business or you're gifted the business or you have to work there in order to have the right to buy it or you have to be a certain age in order to have the right to be gifted it, something like that. And then following that same rule consistently, no matter who is the next person. So not one set of rules for these people and another set for a different set member or another set of the family.
So this whole idea of being paid market rate is something that I absolutely advocate with my clients. And we say, have a look at a number of factors to establish what that market rate will be, because the size of the business, how complicated it is, what its turnover is, all of those, being a CEO in one business or president in one business can be completely different to being another business. So go out there, establish what that market rate is, and then reward people based on their actual responsibilities and the amount of risk they take and that sort of thing. But I suppose from a family perspective, how do you decide who gets what role?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I like to, when asked this question, I love to talk about the royal family. Unfortunately, a lot of people model their decision making around what the royal family does, right? The oldest son is now the boss or the king. And I think that's the exact opposite method. So luckily, you and I both have EOS as a tool. And I lean heavily on the idea of for picking who is in the seat in the next generation around what is the seat that is needed for the business and then who gets it and who wants it and who has the capacity. And it's not 3 different people. It's one person who gets it, who wants it and has the capacity. And what is so important to me is, especially for that integrator role and that visionary role, that does not have to be a family member. The perfect person to run the family business might have a completely different last name. And if you don't have a family member who can do it, please don't make them do it, is what I like to say.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think sometimes we feel like we are obliged to do that, but sometimes it's not. It was interesting. I was working with a family business a number of years ago now, and they were very traditional in terms of the hierarchy and elders and who was respected. And so the elder was given the visionary role. And in the beginning, it was like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "Yeah, no, I definitely want." And over time, he actually realized it wasn't a role that he wanted to be doing. What he really, really loved doing was actually research and development and new products but in a very technical sense as opposed to in that great big picture sense. And so after a while, he sort of said, you know what? I don't GW to this role. I actually would much rather be doing this. And it was a real eye opener for them because in the past, it had always been the elder took the visionary role. Probably the oldest son took the integrator role. And that's just the way that it worked. So it was beautiful for them to understand that you can actually, you develop the business in terms of what the business actually wants. And then you find the right people to do, well, I shouldn't say wants, what the business needs. And then you find the right people to take those seats.
Oh my gosh. I love hearing stories of people who come to that conclusion and they break the trend of how their family has run for a generation or two or three. I don't have any research to support what I'm about to say outside of what my own eyes have seen. I think there's a higher percentage of people in the family business world who are suffering with addiction. And I think one of the reasons for that is that sense of obligation and trying to force themselves to do work that they're not uniquely skilled for. And it just makes life hard. And then they go seeking other things to live through their life versus saying, here's what this business needs. Let's make sure that it has what it needs. That is actually truly what's best for the family.
And that is, of course, the EOS accountability chart makes that stuff really easy because it takes all the emotion out of it and says, hey, let's take a look at this business almost like with a blank piece of paper and say, if we are building this from the ground up now, what would be the main functions? What would we hold those functions accountable for? And then, obviously we've got the integrator and the visionary as well. And only once we've got that nailed do we actually then say, right, do we have the right people to actually fit those roles? And I think for a family business, I mean, it's great in any business, but I think for a family business particularly, it's suddenly taking away the hierarchy, the history, the emotion. It's more about this is what the role requires. Do you actually look at that and do you go, that is me. That is what I want to do. I get that. I really want to do that. I've got the capacity. Or you look at it and go, oh, you know what? That's not really me at all.
Yeah. Are you looking at that and saying, okay, I'll do it if I have to, or I'll do it if you want me to, versus I can't wait to do that, or I have ideas about that, or I'm excited about that. I like to say to people, if your accountability chart looks suspiciously like your family tree, there's a problem. Like they shouldn't look the same, except maybe once ever. That's how it worked, but they really shouldn't be a similar looking chart. The other thing is, I think a lot of family businesses, even inside of EOS and even inside of the accountability chart, will think, well, the future visionary has to, do some sales and they have to work in finance and they have to learn a little bit about HR and then they have to run operations and then they can be the integrator and then they can be the visionary. And while that is logical, that's not the way the accountability chart's supposed to work. I've never seen a uniquely skilled visionary who had the best training ever in the integrator seat. The integrator seat is not where you learn to be a great visionary. The operations seat might be a great place to learn to be an integrator, but it isn't this step ladder that you have to walk up to be a visionary. And that's an accident people make, even with the amazing tool that you and I get to put in front of them.
And I think it's also really interesting because often people see the visionary as being, yes, a little bit, so it's a hierarchical, right? They see it as being the top of the tree, therefore it is the most important role. But it isn't. It's just a different role. I mean, it's a different role in terms of the skill sets required and in terms of what we need from that person. And as you said, it doesn't have to be a family member.
Right. I mean, what are the chances that the same family is going to have that big ideas, big relationship person in every generation? It just doesn't happen. I got to talk at the EOS conference about the owner's box, and that's a really important box that is invisible on the accountability chart usually, but that goes up above the visionary, and anybody who's an owner needs to be in that box, whether or not, let's say oh my gosh, this is my favorite, one of my favorite. I have so many. I guess all of my family business stories are my favorite. So here's another of my favorites. There was a third generation family business owner that I knew, and he'd been told since he was a little boy, he was the oldest grandson, you're going to run the family business someday. What he really loved was taking care of the yard and the trees and the flowers. And he had a huge passion for, landscaping and native plants and flowers and stuff. That's what he wanted to do with his life. But they said, oh, no, you're going to run the business. You're going to run the family business. He got into that seat. The business started tanking. His health went away. His mental health went away. and they owned a ton of property. There actually was a full-time job that could exist in the family business of taking care of the property and the land and all of that. They finally realized, let him go do the thing that he really loves to do. They hired someone from outside. The business flourished. He flourished. The family flourished. It was a game changer, but it was all about get the person in the right seat. He still, of course, attends the owners' meetings. He is an owner. He's the oldest cousin. He's the most looked up to cousin. He must be there in the owner's seat. He didn't have to run the day to day.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I had a similar situation with a family business that actually grows vegetables and sells into retail stores down the South Island. And there's 3 sons working in the business. And one of them, he is just hands-on. He loves getting dirty. He loves fixing machinery. He loves fixing tractors, all that kind of stuff. And so, he's in a role where he gets to fix the tractors. He gets to do all the maintenance. He absolutely loves it. And that's where he's in his element. And it's not like, not everybody needs to be leading the business or, being in charge. And one of the other sons is very much a visionary. Absolutely terrible at the integration work. And so we were able to find an external integrator and bring that external integrator in. And it's freed him up to do what he absolutely loves. And I think when you're doing what you love all the time, then that's when the value really gets added to the business. And as you said, your personal life becomes better as well because you're not stressed, you're not worried.
So many people like to say, we're a family first business. And because we're a family first, our 2 kids run it. Oh my gosh, no, if you're a family first business, have really qualified people run the business. Make tons of money and share it with the family. It's funny, there's this amazing correlation between making lots of money and being happy in the family. I've noticed, you've probably noticed that too. And there's this huge correlation between doing work you love and being happy. So get people doing work they love, get great people to run the business, cash big checks, do work you love, and enjoy your family time.
Okay, so let's imagine we've got a family business where, let's say, we've gone to 2nd generation and there isn't somebody who's naturally suited to the visionary or the integrator role, and we've brought somebody in externally who's going to do that. Tell me a bit more about the owner's box as you see it and what role that plays and how does it interact with the family business?
I think the owner's box is huge. If the 3-circle model from Harvard puts the owner's box or puts the owner's circle at the top. I think it's the least thought about circle. And in my opinion, the most important. I think the job of the owner's box is to think about risk for the family and risk for the business, and also opportunity for the family and opportunity for the business. And sometimes the highest risk opportunity for the business is the highest risk for the business is the highest opportunity for the family. For example, saying, we'll make our kids the people who run the business because they'll make lots of money doing that, right? And that'll be great, But if they're not qualified, then they're really increasing the risk for the business. The other way I think about the owner's box is if you think, at least in the US, they don't have these on playgrounds so much. Seesaws, do they call them seesaws? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you think about, there's that balancing point and then the seesaw going back and forth. To me, if you think of one side of the seesaw is the family and the other is the business, it's the owner's box that figures out how do we balance those two? How can we break the tie, if you will, between the needs of the family and the needs of the business? And that's really big decisions. Like, should we even own it anymore? It might be in the next generation that there's nobody who wants to run it and nobody cares about it. They're not interested in it. Maybe the best thing to do is to sell it. Alternatively, the best thing to do might be hire someone to run it really well, learn how to be great owners and do that. Be great owners.
It's interesting because I always have this conversation with my family businesses about what do they really want, because you don't actually have to sell the business to be able to live off it. There's a great family business over here that has got a lot of assets, and it's a huge family business into the 6th or 7th generation now. And, the owners of that business, they make enough from the dividends to actually live very well off. They don't actually get involved in the running of the business in any way, shape or form. And that's okay. You can be a great owner of a family business.
I love that so much. I feel like if there was a building I could stand on and scream that message all day long and people would hear me, I would do it. So I love that example. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be owners together, but it's way easier to be owners together than when you have people who are not competent also running the business. Great owners can make decisions about How much money do we want from this? How much money are we willing to put into it? What are we wanting from it? Are we willing to invest because we want our people to be the top paid people in our industry? Or maybe we don't, right? They get to make huge decisions like that and really stand arm in arm in supporting the leadership team that is running the business that might or might not have their family name on it. Oh, it can be a beautiful partnership for people. I love that example. I love that.
And I think you talk about this a lot in your book in terms of, being really clear about what each of those three circles represents, how often they meet, who's the head of the circle, what their responsibilities are, what they're trying to achieve. And I think, it really opened my eyes up when I first read the book in terms of just because it's a family business, you don't actually have to work in it. It really can be that you can learn to be a great owner of a family business rather than actually wanting to work in it. I am interested though. So, so we've got this owner's box and they're making the bigger decisions. You've got the vision with the integrator, you've got the roles all set up. We've now, put the right people in the right seats. We know that the people are doing what they love, that they're great at it and they're adding real value. We know that they share our core values. We're still going to get conflict though, right? Because conflict is healthy. I think it's funny that people are always nervous about conflict. But if you think about Patrick Lencioni's pyramid, trust pyramid, you actually have to have healthy conflict to get things like trust and commitment and results. So what happens when you get conflict in a family business between, let's say, between siblings or between a father and a daughter?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love how well you know this topic because you're so passionate about it. It just makes you ask such good questions, such thoughtful questions. Yeah, it is inevitable. And what you said is so true. People often think the goal for some reason is to not have conflict. The goal is to have lots of it and to have it be good conflict.
Healthy conflict.
Right. Yeah. Healthy conflict, which doesn't always look like yelling. I mean, of course, we know this language from Patrick Lencioni of conflict is not, it's typically not yelling. It's debate. It's discussion. It's saying what you really think. But people often think conflict means yelling, hurt feelings, people being mad at each other. Anyway, here's the thing that I think is the most helpful is, again, going back to that 3-circle model, is making sure that the conflict is happening in the right circle. So for example, I know this sad story of a family business. The second generation dad who was leading a bank died very unexpectedly. And the mom and his children were not really prepared to own the bank. And they were trying to figure out what to do. And they were thinking, well, we have to put someone in to be the president of the bank. And so they were debating who it should be. And one sister was saying, no, you can't do it. I'm not going to agree to that. You cannot run the bank. And finally, everybody said, why? And she said, because you crashed my bike when I was 7. It's funny and it's sad, but it's the perfect example of getting your family stuff accidentally into the owner's box. This was an owner's conversation. So for me, a great way to get ahead of conflict like that is to make sure we're clear. We are owners talking about ownership things with owners. We're not a family talking about ownership stuff with each other. Even though, yes, you do have family relationships, or we're in the family and we're talking about family stuff. Or here we are in the business, but we're colleagues in the business, even though we also happen to be brothers or sisters or dad or daughter. Just being really clear about that. I like to ask my family business clients to think of 3 tables when they think of those 3 circles. And the business table is, the conference room table or the session room table. The family table is the kitchen table or the dining room table. And the owner's table is the boardroom. And now in a lot of family businesses, that's the exact same physical table. So it's important to say, okay, we're having a business meeting. We're talking about business things and we are colleagues here at this business, in this business meeting, or when they're with you in a session, right? Here we are talking about the business. We're not owners and we're not family members. Of course, you are owners and you are family members, but the point here is we are colleagues. Put that hat on and stick with that hat. I have this great couple that I worked with. She's the visionary, husband was the integrator. And they decided to create this code so they were clear. Are we husband and wife right now? Or are we visionary and integrator? Or are we co-owners? They didn't worry about the ownership one much day to day. But their code was, if she walked into his office and shut the door or vice versa, they were husband and wife. If they walked into each other's office and the door was open, they were colleagues. And it was just this little trick to remind them, who's talking to who. I worked with a father and a daughter once, and their code was if she had a nickname that he would call her, or she would call him dad if it was a family question. If it was a business question, they called each other, no nickname, no dad, just their first name.
Yeah, just a name.
That's
a great idea.
Tool that they use to remind themselves who is talking to.
Yeah, it is funny. I do it with a lot of husband and wife teams who, sometimes naturally take the Visionary Integrator, because that's exactly what they're doing. But what I loved about the concept of Visionary Integrator when I first came across it was it gave married couples suddenly an insight into why they had a natural tension in the business. And it wasn't anything to do with husband and wife. It was because actually they were being a visionary in terms of the way they approach things, or being an integrated in terms of the way they approach things. And so suddenly it was like a revelation for them, where they could actually go, it's not husband being a dick. It's actually husband being a visionary, and that's what visionaries do. And so he's just being a visionary, and that's okay. And then, the husband would kind of say, oh, it's not my wife being a pain in the ass. It's like, actually, she's just being an integrator. That's what an integrator does. And it's wonderful to kind of have that distinction and be able to kind of go, look, I'm wearing my business hat now. I'm a visionary. That's what I'm doing, rather than I'm your husband. And
I love that so much. I like to call the visionary the CE yes, and the integrator the CE no. And I stole that from somebody I worked with a long time ago, but it's the same thing, right? It's not the mom who spoils the kid and the dad who disciplines them, although that might be the case at home. In the business, it's really helpful to have the CE yes and the CE no.
Yeah. And that natural tension that exists between them actually creates magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I do know from my experience that in certain family businesses, there are some conversations that go on behind the scenes that really probably shouldn't be had behind the scenes. And I do know also that some family business advisors, and this is not a negative, but they feel like they have to go and talk to everybody individually and kind of hear what that person's doing. I always worry that creates a space where there's a chance to have what we would call sidebar conversations, and you're not actually dealing with the issue. How do you recommend, if there's an issue going on and that conversation is going on behind the scenes, how do you recommend dealing with it?
Yeah. Meaning if that conversation is happening between them or with another advisor?
Well, I think it could happen with both. I mean, sometimes, okay, I'm going to be really honest. I've seen it with a businesses recently, where we all got together in a room, we talked about certain things, and then what happened was the daughter went away and had a word in the mum's ear. And then the mum rang me and sort of said, oh, yeah, this is what's going on. And my immediate thing was like, we need to get back in a room together. We need to have this conversation openly with the whole team, because otherwise what we're actually encouraging is these sidebar conversations. And I'm sure there's more going on as well, which means that you're undermining each other and you're not actually having the conversation to be had. But I was just wondering how you would approach that, if you can see that going on.
I mean, the same way you just said it is, we have to get in the room and talk about this together. I got this wonderful phrase from one of our fellow EOS implementers, John LaFonsi, and he may have taken it from someone else, but I give him credit. He said, I want you talking to each other and not about each other. Isn't that great? Oh, I just love that. And so that's been my new go-to thing, is you must be talking to each other and not about each other. And if daughter's talking to mom and then mom's talking to me, nobody's talking to each other. And to me, the most destructive thing I could do is spend lots of time allowing them to talk to me, which means talking about each other instead of to each other. There's one small exception to that, is if there's a major mental health issue where the other person is not capable of talking, then I guess it makes sense to talk about them and not to them. But then I'm not the right person to talk to. Then they need somebody who's really skilled to help them with that. And in most situations, that is not the case. Someone might be hard to talk to, or get crabby easily, or not understand, but we can work through that. Let's get in the room and talk to each other.
I love it. I've just written that down. So I want you to talking to each other, not about each other.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
I do. I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, cool. So before we finish up on this topic, I always ask for, a couple of tips and tools that people can take away, that they can start thinking about and hopefully put into action immediately in their business. So for any family business owners listening in, who are talking about, getting clarity in those roles, resolving conflicts, having those professional boundaries. What would be your 3 top tips or tools, Sarah?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I came prepared. Let me get them. I know the first one was, oh my gosh. Okay, here's my first one. I would love to remind people that if they sit quietly for a moment or a few moments, they probably know what they need to do. They probably know it. And with that, I would say what you know you need to do might be painful, it might be scary, but what you're doing now is also painful and scary, and you're just used to it. So go for it and do the thing you know you need to do. That'd be my first one. My second one is thinking about those 3 circles. Share those 3 circles, and you can Google 3-circle model of family business. You can find it on my website. I bet it's on your website. The 3 circles, the family and the business and the ownership, draw it for your fellow family members, your fellow owners, and make an agreement. When we're talking about business stuff, let's be colleagues. When we're talking about ownership stuff, let's be owners together. And then let's talk about family stuff in the family circle. That's my second one. And kind of connected to those two, it's inevitable. You're going to accidentally show up in a business meeting and a family thing will come up, or you'll be in an owner's meeting and a business thing will come up. The number one way I think to not accidentally go off on a tangent and have an accidental owner's meeting at the business meeting is to just take out a piece of paper and start the agenda for your next meeting. So, if you're wanting to say to your brother, you can't be the president of the bank because you crashed my bike, well, take out a piece of paper and write crash my bike. And that's the first topic for the next family meeting. We need to finish this owner's meeting. Is he qualified to run the bank? If he is, let's say yes.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so just to repeat that, so if you've got an issue that you need to think about, sit quietly for a moment. You probably know what you need to do, and when you know what you need to do, have the courage, I guess, to actually do the right thing. The 3-circle model is make sure that you share it, you draw it, and you make an agreement about what each of those circles stands for. And then if you're in a meeting and you're going off down a tangent in terms of moving into a different circle, just grab a piece of paper, write it down, put it on the agenda. That becomes one of the first topics for your next family ownership, whatever the meeting is that you've got there. Beautiful. Okay, great. Hey, thank you so much. That is really awesome. I know that you've got a couple of books. I give them out extensively to my clients because what I love about your books is they're not great big text heavy books. They're actually practical, pragmatic things that really get the family thinking about what's going on and get them doing some exercises that will actually help them. So just share those 2 books with me, the titles. I know them roughly, but I'll probably get them wrong.
Thank you for giving them out. That, of course, makes me feel amazing. And I did write them. I jokingly call them coloring books for adults because they're more about what you write in them than what you read in them. So although there aren't any, well, there are a few pictures you could color if you want. Anyway, the first one is for owners of family businesses, and it's called Start Here. The subtitle is A Guide for Family Business Succession. But what I've found is even family businesses who aren't within 10 years of succession are getting value out of that book. The second book is called Married to the Family Business, and it's a handbook for people who are married to family business owners. So that mom or dad who doesn't work in the business, who wants to kind of understand that world that their kids and their spouse are in.
I can highly recommend both books. As I said, I give them out to all of my clients. They are just beautiful in terms of really getting you to think. And it just gives you something to actually move away with so that you can actually be practical about it right from day one, which is fantastic. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to catch up with you again soon.
Oh, it was really fun to hang out with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.